Hi, and welcome to the first grade science curriculum preview for the 4th 6 weeks. Today we're going to talk about Unit 4, Earth Cycles and Systems. As always, just want to point out some key planning documents that really will save you time as you start to get your plans down for the 6 weeks. Today we're going to look at the pacing guide. We're going to look at some components of the unit overview and then the vocabulary on the clarifiers. So let's start off with the pacing guide. If you look at the whole 6 weeks or the whole unit, you'll see it's divided into 3 different little mini units. We begin with weather and then looking at demonstrating the air is all around us and that wind is moving air. And those 2 content standards have 7 days associated with those, and then ongoing to keep recording the weather information throughout the rest of the 6 weeks. And then we move into 2 10-day mini units, one for 1.8b, where we're looking at changes in the appearance of objects in the sky, and then 1.8c, identifying characteristics of the season of the year and day and night. I just want to talk a little bit about the pacing and why there are the associated days that go along with each one of these little mini units. I encourage you to, when you look at the content standard, to really look at the verbs so that we understand, for instance, in 1.8b, students should be observing and recording those changes. And so you might have to take some time to talk about and to explicitly teach what an observation is. When we're looking at changes in the sky, when we observe that, what senses are we going to be using? And of course, that's going to be mostly our sense of sight. But even just talking through what does that mean to observe, and then how would we record that? What are some different ways that we could record that with pictures, with words, with drawings, with video recording, or with audio recording? There's a couple of different ways to do that. Are there numbers that we can write down to help us record that? And you'll notice that although I'm focusing on the verbs here in this content standard, that also brings in this particular process skill here, and it could bring in some of our other tools that we have, like the notebooks. This also is a great time for us to bring in what do scientists do? What do we call scientists that look at changes of objects in the sky? And so when you really start to look at explicitly teaching some of those process skills and pulling that connection together with the content and the process skills, you can see where the 10-day component really does fit nicely. The next view we're going to look at a little bit more closely is the unit overview. And for those of you that have been using the unit overviews, you know that they have 3 different main functions. We have some guiding questions there to help guide your students to make the connections between the hands-on experiences, the vocabulary, with the big concepts for the particular unit. We also have some approaches to classroom use, which we'll talk about a little bit more in depth in just a second. And then some of the resources when you get ready to put pencil to paper and make your plans. So the guiding questions, they're kind of organized by the standards there. And so really by the end of the unit, your students should be able to answer these questions either verbally using the vocabulary, maybe on your word wall, or making sure that they can articulate that maybe through pictures or a combination of words and pictures and verbal responses. There's also some information here, whether you've been teaching first grade for a while or if you're new to the grade level, that will really help you frame where you're going and the information that your first graders really need to know about that particular standard. So for instance, when we're talking about process skills, we're looking at organizing data. Well, there's a couple of hints in here and some mini lesson ideas that will help you understand how to teach students to use a thermometer. That's a demonstration thermometer, and what it really means to talk about relative temperature versus actually reading the temperature. That's really where your students are right now. So we'll just kind of use that as an example. When we look at the key concept under here for weather. The key concept is to use tools such as windstocks, socks and thermometers to collect that weather information. Well, if you look at the standard, it says relative temperature. And what that means is it's relative, basically not using a number on the demonstration thermometer that you can see up here in the picture, but saying if the red is down here, that's cold. And this is what kind of weather is associated with cold. And this is what I might wear. Or this is what I would do outside or not do outside when it's cold. And when the red is up here, that's going to be hot and so forth. So that just kind of lays that out in this section. So you can read through that and make sure that you're hitting those key points, or you might be able to incorporate some things that you haven't done before. Also in the resources, I've got the notes here about, I think, some good points in STEM scopes as well as aims that connect well for your students with that particular standard. I've also got some neat links over here for some great weather sites that you might want to check out, as well as some Delta readers that we have that are good fits for those content standards. I just wanted to kind of show you a visual of what your Delta readers look like. This is when we were boxing them up in the warehouse a couple of years ago. But the Delta readers, you have 7 big books, and then you have copies of student readers, so smaller versions of those, and they come in this long plastic Starlight box, and it has all of those in there. So if you're not familiar with where those are on campus, there should be 3 of those on campus for your grade level. They may be in the library. So if you aren't aware of where those are, you might want to check those out. And we go back to the previous slide. So I have finding the moon, weather and sky, and sunshine and shadows as listed as being good connections with this unit, the 6 weeks. So you can find all those titles in these boxes. Okay, I always like to compare where the students were last year in kindergarten and what's our first grade focus, because kindergarten and first grade do have very similar types of standards. So here's the content standards that are listed for this 6 weeks. And so 8A deals with weather, 8B deals with patterns and characteristics, and then 8C looks at objects in the sky. But there are some subtle differences as the students start to continue their development. So I'm just going to highlight those in both the verbs as well as in 8B, the difference between repeating patterns and characteristics. The big differences here are going to be those verbs, which are also represented in those process skills. So last year with weather, students simply observed and described it. This year they're going to be amping that up to record that information. For 8C, they observed, described, and illustrated objects in the sky. And this year, we're going to be focusing on recording changes in those appearances of those objects in the sky. So just a reminder about vocabulary. If you're using STEM scopes, picture vocabulary, that is great, but I just want to remind you that it has some but not all the terms that are listed on the clarifier. So you'll want to always check with the clarifier and make sure that these terms are the ones that your students are being exposed to and can really use when they're answering those guiding questions. And speaking of vocabulary, I found a couple of examples of interactive word walls from first grade. These both came from Dr. Julie Jackson's Facebook page. It's called Science Toolkit. And these are examples of interactive word walls that are focused on 2 of the standards for this 6 weeks. And you are welcome to go on there and find some examples as well. I like these 2 because they included student work on them, and one of them is a little bit hard to see because of the focus on it, but I'll start over here with the weather. So when it was talking about relative temperature, here the interactive word wall has different thermometers, so that's in introducing that term with an example, and you could even have a demonstration thermometer right here next to it, measuring temperature. And then here's where that relative comes in. This is hot, this is warm, this is cool, this is cold. And you can see that the students have written those and probably colored these in as well. So when it's all red, we call that hot. When it's kind of all the way to the top, then we might call that warm. And as it starts to move down, we have different words for that. As far as the sky goes, we have clear. And here were some pictures that we took when we went outside and printed out of a clear sky. Here's partly cloudy, and these are some pictures that we took, or it could be student drawings. And then this would be an example of what it would look like for cloudy. So you can see how students would interact with this as far as adding information to the word wall over time as students start to expose and explore some of these concepts. Over on this picture here, we have looking at the characteristics of day and night. So even just starting very simply with, I have, let's say for instance, we just start with a black butcher paper background, nothing else on it. And we have a blue butcher paper background. And we don't even have the words day and night put up there, but we show students the words day and night. Which one would we put day on? Which one would we put night? Why would that be? Starting that conversation from day one when we introduce that standard, and then building it up over time. So you see that there are student drawings up here of things that they would see at night, and then student drawings of things that they would see during the day. So you can envision taking your students out, observing some of the things that they see in the sky, or looking at some pictures of a night sky and adding these to the interactive word wall. And then we have some examples of some writing down here, or some observations that the students have included as well. So finally, I want to wrap up with a couple of technology connection ideas from Jeff Samuelson. These weather sites are, there's a couple of them listed in the unit overview, but if you're looking for a weather app for iPads, the WAP is a great one for the information that it has. It also includes the sun and moonrise and set times, which is a nice pattern to see between day and night. Just a reminder about Chatterpix is a great use, and so is StoryKit. And the Kids Weather Report is something I have in the unit overview, but it is a really great weather site for primary kids. There's a little screenshot with a boy and girl. You can put in a particular location and it shows the temperature in Fahrenheit and in Celsius, and that would be really neat to show the students what the temperature is. For first grade, we can definitely stick with Fahrenheit, but then translate, well, what would 49 degrees be on our demonstration thermometer? Would that be a lot of red? Would that be a little bit of red? So that might be a neat way to interact with that. Well, I hope you got some ideas, and I hope you found some resources that'll help you plan for this 6 weeks. And as always, if I can help support your science program, please do not hesitate to reach out, and have a great rest of your day.